Hey, what's up everybody? It's Zach with Fire and Ferment. Today, we're going to be testing the 3-2-1 method for pork ribs. If you're not familiar with this method, it's a technique where you smoke the ribs for 3 hours uncovered, wrap them in foil, put them back on the smoker for 2 hours, and then take them out of the foil and back on the smoke for 1 hour uncovered. It's really simple, and it's supposed to be a foolproof method that doesn't require any temperature probes or anything like that. A lot of people use this method and get pretty good results with it, but to be honest, I've never used that method before. I feel like I've got a pretty good pork rib method that I've covered in another video, so today we're going to test the two against each other. It's really simple. I've got 2 racks of St. Louis style pork ribs that we're going to trim and rub the same. The only difference is we're going to use the 3-2-1 method on one rack and my method on the other rack. And we'll compare the results at the end and I'll tell you my final thoughts. I've already got my smoker going. It's really cold outside today, so we've got a really big coal bed so that we can sustain the fire and get the temp up in the smoker. We're going to be using a mixture of white oak and red oak today. We've got our smoker up to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. So let's get going. So here we got 2 racks of pork ribs that we're going to open up and trim. St. Louis style ribs are a piece of cake to trim. You basically have to do nothing. If anything, you may have a little flap of meat on the smallest bone section that it's a good idea to round off. If you see any flaps of meat, it's a good idea to take those off so they don't burn. On the underside, there's this little extra section where there's additional meat. I usually take that off as much as I can just so it cooks more evenly. We also have a membrane on the underside that a lot of people like to take off. I find it easier and more effective just to score it like so. It's as simple as that. We're gonna hit this with a salt, pepper, garlic rub, and we're gonna put the same amount on both racks of ribs. We start with the underside and then flip it over to the meat side. Simple as that. Let's get these racks on the smoker. We're just going to put these on in the sweet spot of the smoker and keep them here at 225 for 3 hours before we check in. This video is brought to you by our sponsor, Woodchuck Firewood. Woodchuck has all kinds of different wood. They're based out of Valley Center, Kansas, but they ship their wood all over the country. If you're on the lookout for wood splits that you need for your barbecue, fire pit, or fireplace, Woodchuck Firewood is your one-stop shop. Type in the link below into your browser to access their website and place an order, and tell them that Fire and Ferment sent you over, and they'll take good care of you. The purpose of the first part of this cook is just to lay down smoke and start the cook. So we're going to run a semi-clean, semi-dirty fire at 225 degrees for the next 3 hours. After 3 hours, let's check back in. We notice there's a nice, beautiful red color. One of these racks we'll take off and lay down some foil, and we'll throw in a half and half mixture of apple cider vinegar and water. We wrap up the rack and back on the smoker for 2 hours. The other rack we'll leave unwrapped and start spritzing with the same half and half mixture of apple cider vinegar and water so that nothing burns. I decided to flip this rack to make sure we get even cooking. Just continue spritzing every 15 minutes. After an hour of spritzing the rack that's unwrapped, we crank our smoker temp to 275. The higher heat causes muscle contraction, which will lead to pullback in the bone, so you get a more plump bite. We'll keep it here for an hour. We keep spritzing every 15 minutes so nothing on the outside burns. Another hour has gone by. It's time to unwrap the 3-2-1 ribs. So we do this and throw them back on for another hour. These ribs have basically been roasting in their own juices for 2 hours, so I think they're probably wet enough at this point that we don't need to spritz. It's time to wrap our other rack, so we do the same thing here. Lay down our foil and put in some apple cider vinegar water solution. I'll spritz the darker areas as well. Wrap the ribs up and put them back on for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, we check these ribs by picking them up in the center. They should feel pliable, almost like they're going to break, but not quite. At this point, we unwrap and check a temp in between the bones using our ThermoPro Lightning, which should read somewhere between 204 and 210 degrees. Now it's time to glaze. Hey guys, whenever you're doing any type of meat on the barbecue, it's really helpful and necessary to have a high quality instant read thermometer so you know right where you're at in the cook, and so that you can also test for doneness using the probe feel test. I'm a big proponent of this ThermoPro Lightning, which is an industry standard for instant read probe thermometers. This will give you a temperature readout in 1 second flat. It's highly accurate, it's waterproof, it's magnetized, so it'll sit right on my garage fridge, which is right next to my smoker. This is not only helpful for rib cooks, but also cooks like pork butts, brisket, chuck roast or poor man's brisket, turkey, chicken, steaks, you name it. We also like to use it inside if we're doing like a roast or something in the oven. And believe it or not, I also use it for kombucha too. When I ferment kombucha, I use this ThermoPro Lightning instant read thermometer so I know what the temperature is of the liquid that I'm fermenting. I highly recommend you pick one of these up. Click on the link I've shared in the description below and type in code FIREFERMENT20 for 20% off your order. I promise you, you can't go wrong with this ThermoPro Lightning. Check it out. You can use whatever barbecue sauce you want, but we're going to be using some Sweet Baby Ray's that's been diluted down with apple cider vinegar. So we'll glaze these ribs up and back on the smoker so the glaze can caramelize. This will take about 15 minutes or so. In the meantime, our 3-2-1 ribs are about to finish up, so we're just going to leave those on the smoker and glaze those up in the same way and let both racks of ribs finish off at the same time.
It's real simple. Just paint the glaze on both racks and give it some time to caramelize up. We're still cooking at 275. When both racks have glazed up, it's time to take them off the smoker and let them rest inside for about a half hour before we dig in. First, we start with my preferred method for pork ribs. Notice how clean the slice was. Very little shredding, which I like. The flavor is just what I want. Nice smoke flavor. The pork took on that rub really nicely. The fat is rendered. Each bite is tender and juicy, but it doesn't fall off the bone. I don't like fall off the bone. What we've achieved here is tug off the bone, and it makes for a much better bite. Next, we move on to the 3-2-1 ribs. Notice when I slice through it, the rack just gives and my knife kind of falls through it. It's also a lot more shreddy, almost like a pulled pork consistency. You can see side by side the 3-2-1 ribs are essentially falling apart, while the other ribs are holding together pretty well. The flavor is still good, almost identical to the others, which isn't surprising since we cooked them in the same smoker, same wood, same rub, same spritz solution. The texture is a bit off, and the meat just falls off the bone. I might as well just be eating pulled pork. The big thing I noticed from this was that while the fat was rendered, it had a squeaky, mushy mouthfeel to it. Just ruined the whole experience for me. I think I'm going to stick with my preferred method for the future.
And that is how we smoke ribs at Fire and Ferment. If you like this type of content and you want to see more of it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and click on that little bell icon so you don't miss any new content. I love you guys, and stick around.